Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to take a deep dive into Asia. Specifically, some pretty interesting news coming out of Singapore and Japan.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of CNBC articles here, and they're painting
Okay.
like really different pictures of what's going on.
Interesting.
So I thought, what better way to unpack this than
Absolutely.
our deep dive today.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So what I found fascinating
Mm-hmm.
is how you've got these two countries, right, that are geographically pretty close to one another,
Yeah.
and yet their economic situations seem really, really different.
Yeah. And it really speaks to, how different approaches to policy and
Oh, for sure.
different kind of, reactions to the global economic climate can really have a big impact.
Yeah, and what I was thinking too is this is a good reminder for everybody listening that, this might feel like it's happening a world away, but these things can actually have an impact on,
Oh, absolutely.
our own personal finances
Yeah.
and our investments and things like that.
100%.
So let's start with Singapore.
Okay.
Their inflation rate cooled down to 1.4% in October,
Wow.
the lowest it's been since March of 2021,
That's impressive.
which is really incredible when you think about how many other countries are really struggling to get inflation under control.
Yeah.
So what's the secret sauce over there? What are they doing?
Well, a couple of things. One is that you've got decreased car costs
Okay.
and a slower pace of rent increases.
Okay.
So those are two factors.
Hmm.
But what's really interesting about Singapore
Mm-hmm.
is they have a unique monetary policy
Interesting.
where they focus on their exchange rate.
Okay.
So rather than just focusing on interest rates like a lot of central banks do,
Right.
they really focus on managing their exchange rate to try to keep prices stable.
So can you break that down a little bit more? I mean, how does that actually work? Like, how does tweaking an exchange rate actually impact inflation?
Sure. So imagine, for example, Singapore wants to keep import prices down.
Okay.
They could adjust their currency
Mm-hmm.
to make it stronger against, say, the US dollar.
Okay.
And that would make goods that they import from the US cheaper for Singaporeans,
Oh,
which would help to control overall prices.
I see. So it's like strategically
Yeah.
manipulating how much buying power
Exactly.
their currency has
Exactly.
to basically make goods that could be contributing to inflation more affordable.
Right.
It's pretty clever.
This very strategic approach.
Yeah. And it seems like it's working too.
It does seem to be working.
I mean, they even raised their economic growth projections for the year
That's right.
to around 3.5%.
Yeah, that's a big vote of confidence in their economy.
It really is.
Yeah. And it suggests that their approach is working.
Right.
But, it does raise a question of, how sustainable is this in the long run?
Right.
Especially if, global economic conditions shift more dramatically.
Right. Could it make them vulnerable?
Yeah. Are they too reliant on this one tool?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Are they walking a tightrope a little bit?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got Singapore seemingly sailing through these turbulent economic waters.
Smooth sailing for now.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Now let's look at Japan.
Okay.
Their headline inflation also dropped to 2.3% in October,
Okay.
lowest since January.
Mm-hmm.
So on the surface, that sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah, it sounds good on the surface.
But you were saying there's more to this story.
Yeah, there's a little bit more to it.
What's going on beneath the surface?
So underneath that headline number, you've got something called core inflation.
Okay.
And that excludes fresh food and energy.
Okay.
And that actually rose to 2.3%.
Okay.
So that's the number that the Bank of Japan is watching very closely.
Okay, so core is like peering beneath the hood,
Exactly.
see how the engine's really running.
Exactly. It strips out the volatility of food and energy,
Right.
which can fluctuate a lot. And it gives you a better sense of like the underlying inflationary pressures.
Okay, so why is that distinction so important for the Bank of Japan? Why are they so focused on core?
Well, because they want to see sustained and stable inflation,
Okay.
not just these temporary fluctuations.
Gotcha.
Right. They're worried that if they don't address this underlying pressure, it could become a bigger problem later on.
Right. So it's like they're walking this tightrope of, supporting economic growth, but also trying to keep inflation from
Right. They don't want to slam on the brakes,
right.
but they also don't want to let it get out of control.
Yeah. And it sounds like they're not convinced that this recent drop in headline inflation
Right.
is the whole story.
They want to see more data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings us to this big question that I feel like everybody's talking about, right?
Right.
Which is, will the Bank of Japan raise interest rates in December?
The big question.
And there's this Reuters poll showing that 55% of economists are predicting a hike
Okay.
of 25 basis points. But, there are some differing opinions on this.
Yeah, there's some different views for sure.
So what are the arguments kind of on both sides of the debate?
So on one hand, you have economists like Hirofumi Suzuki
Okay.
who believe that the core data really supports a rate hike.
Okay.
They think that raising rates will help to kind of cool things down and prevent inflation from becoming more entrenched.
Okay, so like a little tap on the brakes.
Exactly. A little tap on the brakes just to
keep things from overheating.
prevent that overheating.
Okay, so that's one side. What's the other side?
So on the other side, you have analysts like Lorraine Tan
Okay.
who suggest maybe a more cautious approach.
Okay.
They argue that, raising rates too quickly could actually stifle economic growth,
Okay.
particularly given how fragile the global economy is right now.
Yep.
So they think the Bank of Japan should wait for more evidence,
Right.
before making such a big move.
It's like a delicate balancing act.
It really is.
Right.
It's a tough job.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of that quote from the Bank of Japan governor, Kazuo Ueda,
Yeah.
where he warned against keeping borrowing costs too low for too long.
Right.
I mean, does that sound like he's leaning towards a hike, do you think?
It's hard to say for sure,
Yeah.
but it does suggest that he's aware of the risks
Right.
of keeping rates too low.
Okay.
But it's a reminder that central bankers have a really complex job.
Oh, for sure.
They have to consider, domestic economic data, global trends,
Yeah.
and, whatever decision they make
Yeah, right.
is going to have ripple effects.
Yeah, it makes you realize how interconnected everything is.
It really does.
Right. Like a decision made in Japan, it could have an impact on,
Absolutely.
markets and investments on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
So let's kind of zoom out for a second
Okay.
and try to connect the dots a little bit.
Let's bring it all together.
We've got Singapore, right? They seem to be successfully managing inflation with this kind of unique exchange rate strategy.
Yeah, their unique approach.
And then you've got Japan grappling with this much more complex situation.
Yep.
Experts are divided on, what the best course of action is.
Right.
What does this tell us about kind of the broader
Yeah.
Asian economic outlook?
Well, I think it reminds us that Asia is not a monolithic block.
Right.
Right. Each country has its own unique challenges and opportunities.
Right.
Singapore, for example,
Right.
they have an export-oriented economy.
Right.
They really rely on global trade, so that could make them susceptible to external shocks.
Yeah.
But they've also shown a remarkable ability to adapt and innovate.
Yeah.
Japan, on the other hand, is dealing with an aging population.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of debt, but they also have a long history of technological prowess,
Right.
a very skilled workforce.
So you can't just look at Asia like it's one
Exactly.
big entity.
You can't just lump them all together.
You've got to look at,
It's apples and oranges.
yeah, it's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
And I think this has major implications for investors too,
Oh, sure.
right? If you're looking to invest in Asian markets, you need to do your homework.
Yeah.
Don't just buy a broad, Asian market fund.
Right.
Really dig into individual countries.
Right.
Look at their economic indicators.
Yeah.
What are the factors driving their growth?
Right.
What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses?
Right.
And how might those be impacted by, global trends?
Well, it's all about being an informed investor.
Exactly. Exactly.
You can't just,
Do your research.
yeah, you can't just make assumptions based on
Right.
geography.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think these two examples,
Mm.
Singapore and Japan, really highlight the importance of understanding the tools that governments use
Right.
to manage their economies.
Yeah.
Singapore focusing on their currency's value
Right.
relative to other currencies.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very unique approach.
It is.
And it seems to be working, at
Yeah.
least for now.
Right.
But it also makes them vulnerable to those global currency fluctuations.
Right. It's like
And
betting on a strong global economy.
Right.
And then you've got Japan, who's relying on more traditional methods.
Like interest rates.
Right, like interest rate adjustments. And each approach has its own risks and rewards.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to stay informed.
Mm-hmm.
Understand the potential consequences of these policies.
Right,
And whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out,
right.
these global economic trends can have a real impact
It really is.
on your portfolio.
It's like this giant chess game.
It is like a chess game.
Right. with central banks and governments making these moves
Yeah, they're the players.
that have ripple effects all over the globe.
And we're all kind of watching,
Right, we're all watching.
trying to figure out what the next move's going to be.
Exactly. Yeah, and the more you understand the moves, the better you are at navigating this whole,
Right.
complex world of finance.
Yeah, the more informed you are, the better.
Exactly.
Yeah. It is fascinating
It is.
how these different countries are handling things.
Yeah, it's like, trying to predict the weather.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many different factors
Oh, yeah. So many variables.
that can change at any moment.
And that's what makes it interesting.
It really does. It keeps you on your toes.
It does. It does. You got to stay informed.
Okay, so as we wrap up, this deep dive into the Asian economies, what's the one key takeaway
Ooh, the one key takeaway.
you want our listeners to walk away with?
I would say perspective.
Okay.
Don't just focus on the headlines, right? Dig deeper.
Yeah.
Understand the nuances.
Oh,
Consider the broader context.
So it's kind of like that saying, don't judge a book by its cover.
Exactly.
All right. You have to read the whole story,
You got to read the whole thing.
understand all the characters.
And then you can appreciate the message.
Right. And it's the same with economics.
Exactly.
Don't just look at,
Don't just skim the surface.
the surface level data.
Yeah. Ask questions. Challenge assumptions.
Okay.
Seek out diverse perspectives.
It's all about being informed.
It is. It is.
Right.
Yeah.
So there you have it, folks.
Another deep dive.
Another deep dive. Complete.
Done.
Hopefully you found this exploration of these Asian economies insightful.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
It really is kind of like a giant chess game.
It is a chess game.
Right, where all the players are.
Huge stakes.
Yeah, central banks and governments, and they're all making these strategic moves. And we're all affected by it.
Yeah, we're all on the board,
Right.
whether we realize it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Every move has these ripple effects.
And it's like, we're the pawns or something.
Yeah. Or maybe we're like
Right.
the spectator.
Right, the spectator is just watching the game unfold.
Just trying to
Yeah, and make sense of it all.
make sense of it.
Yeah, and I think the more we understand the moves,
Right, yeah.
the better we are at,
Navigate.
the whole complex world of finance.
Yeah, exactly. The more informed we are, the better.
Exactly. All right, so that wraps up another deep dive.
Another one.
We hope you found this exploration of, inflation in Singapore and Japan insightful.
Yeah. Hopefully it gave you some food for thought.
Yes, some things to think about, and,
Yeah.
we'll see you next time.
See you next time.